is up, everyone? Yeah, it's a black screen. You want to know why? Because I didn't turn my camera on. Welcome back to another episode of Lue Reviews. Your home for critical thinking in the realm of the unexplained. I am your host, Luis Jimenez. Welcome back to another show, you guys. We've got stuff to talk about. Stuff to talk about. It's some interesting stuff. So we're going to get to Grusch suing his local sheriff's department. J. Christopher King predicts UFO researcher fallout. Matt Ford yells at Mick West that he sees orbs. And UFO Twitter is broken beyond belief, particularly spaces on Twitter, or X, if you call it that. I don't. So, we'll get a little bit into it. It's really, honestly, at this point, it's a lost cause. So let's see here. Let's switch it up, shall we? Want to say hello to everyone in the chat. Simon Fly, Pat Calabria, Pinzer, who are members, and Complizier, who's a member of the channel. Zach Hyde, Pat Calabria, What's Shaking, Carl Mann, Brian Ibach. Welcome, you guys. Wes H, Brad Burry, UFO Chillo. It's good to see you, man. Welcome. Archangel Reese, welcome. Swint McLeod, What's Shaking. Happy you guys are all here. It's interesting. Anyway, let's go ahead and bring this down, shall we? There we go. All right. Okay, so yeah, we've got some stuff to talk about. Oh, you know what I also have to do? Sorry, guys, I'm coming back from the DMV, so I'm a little flustered. You know how the DMV is. So I forgot to, I thought I was bringing up your chats as I was calling them out, but yeah, there you go. Yoshi, What's Shaking? Again, guys, so happy everyone's here. All right, let's get into this, shall we? So as always, we've got the good old bookmarks. So let's go ahead and get to them. And we got this last second bookmark, which we're gonna, what should we'll pair that with the Matt Ford stuff maybe toward the end. Let's get into UFO whistleblower Dave Grusch is suing the Loudoun County Sheriff for releasing, quote, personal info to journalist Ken Klippenstein. And Klippenstein, who got the info via FOIA, published an article on The Intercept revealing Grusch's past mental health issues. So let's go ahead and click on this. It's by Evan Goodnow, and he's writing over at the Loudoun Times-Mirror. So this is a local paper. So this now has the attention of obviously his local sheriff's department and the people that live in Loudoun County, I guess. And so here we go. UFO whistleblower sues sheriff's office over records release. And it's got a picture of Dave Grusch testifying before the House Oversight Committee and Accountability Subcommittee hearing on UFOs, which happened of July 26th of last year, which, wow, damn, that's like, this article is written one day before the 1 year anniversary of him doing that. That's interesting. Not really. But yeah, fun timing. A retired Air Force officer who testified before Congress that the United States government was involved for decades in a secret, quote, crash retrieval and reverse engineering program involving UFOs, is suing Loudoun County Sheriff Mike Chapman and an unidentified sheriff's office employee for releasing personal information about him. The plaintiff, retired Major David C. Grusch, says in a $2.5 million lawsuit filed on July 16th in Loudoun Circuit Court that a sheriff's office employee improperly released, quote, highly sensitive personal information, end quote, about his medical history in response to a Freedom of Information Act request on July 30th, 2023. The employee is identified only as Jane Doe. In an email to the Times Mirror, Sheriff's Office spokesman Thomas A. Julia said the agency, quote, acted in accordance with the law in responding to the reference FOIA and disagrees with the allegations filed. Ken Klippenstein, then a reporter for The Intercept, filed the records requests 4 days after Grusch testified before the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence. It's interesting that they said then a reporter for The Intercept. If he's a freelance journalist, I don't know. Was he a full-time staffed reporter? I wonder. I don't know. That's an interesting way they phrase that. Grusch told the committee that several current and former members of the intelligence community and military provided him with a, quote, photography, official documentation, and classified oral testimony about the program, according to a transcript of his remarks. Grusch said that he filed a whistleblower complaint with the U.S. Office of the Intelligence Community Inspector General and suffered, suffered retaliation for his actions. A sheriff's office employee provided Klippenstein with an incident report detailing why a magistrate in October 2018 issued an emergency custody order to detain Grusch involuntarily at Innova's Loudoun Adult Medical Psychiatric Services Program for the psychiatric evaluation, according to the lawsuit. Now, here's the thing. I would almost bet that no one in Loudoun County, almost no one, a very small percentage of the people in Loudoun County read that Intercept article about David Grusch that Klippenstein wrote. And this lawsuit in the local paper is now bringing a hell of a lot more attention to Dave Grusch and what's going on. So this idea of like, oh, this damaged me. This is, I don't know, man. Like, this is going to be an interesting court case. This is going to be a very interesting court case. If it goes that far, who knows? It might settle. In that case, we probably will never get the details of it. So the sheriff's office employee provided Klippenstein with an incident report detailing why the magistrate in October 2018 issued that he go to adult medical psychiatric services. An ECO allows people deemed by a magistrate to be a danger to themselves or others to be held for up to 8 hours for evaluation. A mental health worker who evaluated Grusch sought a temporary detention order for him, but Grusch, quote, was not committed and was consequently released. According to the suit, the TDO allows a person deemed a danger to themselves or others to be held up to 72 hours before a civil commitment hearing. Reports and court documents related to an involuntary admission are excluded from being released under the Virginia FOIA, according to the suit. The defendants had no authority to exercise discretion when releasing information relating to the plaintiff's involuntary admission records, reports, and/or documents, the suit says. The disclosure to Klippenstein was prohibited by law. The Intercept, an online investigative news site, published an article on August 9, 2023, that included a redacted version of the incident report. It says Grusch's wife called the sheriff's office to report that he was drunk and experiencing the mental health crisis in their home. The couple sold the home in 2019, according to county property records. The article said that security clearances, which Grusch had, are subject to, quote, strict requirements, and questioned why Grusch was allowed to keep his security clearance after the 2018 incident. The lawsuit says the article caused Grusch to, quote, suffer personally and professionally, end quote. Well, I could definitely say that professionally speaking, people definitely read that article in The Intercept. So now everyone knows. The normies and the people in the intelligence community. I don't think he's going to win a $2.5 million lawsuit. Because I'm pretty sure everything that he got was foilable. According to this article, anyway. And there's, of course, conspiracy about how he got this information when he's told everybody exactly how he's got this information. And I mean Ken Klippenstein. Of course, his name's coming back up because this is now news, and he's getting a ton of shit in, like spaces. He's being called, all sorts of names, as you can imagine, because people are upset with him because a real journalist decided to look into the person who is making, according to him and according to the party of people who believe in him and champion his efforts, he's delivering the biggest news the planet has ever heard, if he's telling the truth. The only issue is we don't have any data or evidence to back any of his claims up. This is going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting. We'll see what comes out of this, because if it was reported to the ICIG as well, which this alluded to, it's going to be interesting to see exactly maybe where that tip came from, because look, you've got a journalist who's investigating, again, this guy that's making the biggest claims on the planet, and he's questioning his peers. He's questioning the people around him. He's also opening the floor to, hey, if you've got any information on this guy that you think is relevant, let me know. And so if you get a tip about this, it depends on when he gets the tip, because if he's getting the tip when the government employee is working, I think pretty sure that's a no-no. But if he gets the tip out of the office, he's at home, he's at dinner, or, he's communicating with him through email off of business email, then I think you're good. Because then it is an anonymous tip, or at least could be considered that way. So we'll see what happens with that. It is interesting that they phrase this Ken Klippenstein, then a reporter for The Intercept. So it tells me he's not employed there anymore. Could this happen to be with this story? Yeah. I also know he's a freelance journalist and he goes from place to place, so I don't know how much I could put into this, but it's just an interesting way to phrase that. $2.5 million. The thing is how do you prove that you caused $2.5 million to a person that most of the world doesn't know who the hell he is? He's not a brand. He's not Nike. He's not Michael Jordan. He's not, he's a guy. with a story. So far. So I don't know how they came up to the value of $2.5 million. But man, even just to avoid, because now you've got the public facing picture of this is difficult for the sheriff's office because he's a retired Air Force guy, a decorated war hero, right? That's the claims that Ken Klippenstein was looking into. And when you get the tip that, you know, the guy with the biggest claim on the planet has had a few issues with wanting to harm himself, and, you know, there's no easy way to discuss that. That's, for me, a red flag. It's nothing against the person. Like, shit, man. Like, mental, dude, everybody goes through their shit. Today, I went through some shit in a space on Twitter. Like, people have their moments, and I get it, right? Like, everybody is under the thumb of pressure, right? Everyone. Even the millionaires. Like, they're feeling it. You can't go on that extra vacation. The yacht they're renting this year is just not as big as last year's. But everyone's feeling it. And so I can understand, you know, someone who's under a lot of work pressure maybe is even in danger of losing some of his access because of maybe some of the behavior he's been displaying and is displayed on more than one occasion. Maybe. I don't know. Only Dave Grusch really knows the answer to that in the intelligence community. But as far as I can tell right now, there's no link between alien bodies and alien craft and reverse engineering things and Dave Grusch. He didn't, according to Dave Grusch, he didn't work on any of the programs. He didn't know the location of any of the programs. He didn't see any of the programs in action or any diagrams or files of these programs or people who worked on them or budgets or locations as to where they are. Get none of that information. It's just funny, man. It's funny how a $2.5 million value was attached to this information coming out. Foilable information. But yeah, the public face of this is just, you've got the local sheriffs, and from my understanding, they're all deputized. They're all voted in the police department of this county, right? I'm assuming it's not a huge county, which is another thing. Like, he's suing his own city, his neighbors. Like, you think the police officers are going to pay for this? If you get $2.5 million, it will come out of taxpayer dollars. But yeah, I don't think you're going to get anywhere near $2.5 million if you do. Unless you could prove there was malfeasance as far as how the information was relayed and when. But again, you've got a DOD journalist. His entire career is talking to DOD employees. I'm confident he knows how to relay and look for information and take tips. He doesn't seem to have any issues like this on any other story that he's reported on. That could be wrong. But as far as I can see, it's not like a targeted attack on Dave Grusch. It's simply okay, this guy's making the biggest claims in the world. I'm going to look into who this guy is. And okay, here's what I found. And I didn't find much outside of this of interest, other than a very mundane intelligence career. I mean, the sheriff's spokesman says that the agency acted in accordance with the law. So it's going to be, yeah, it's just going to be interesting. Man, I got so many thoughts I want to say about this, but like, yeah, if this gets sued as sheriff's department, who else? Who knows, man? Who knows at this point? It's so silly. The things I hear behind the scenes of people getting letters from lawyers from UFO believers is wild. Yeah, I think if you really had the information, if the information that he's implying is real, this is a real phenomenon. They're real NHI. They're real. All of it's real. You would not give two fucking shits what some podunk sheriff's department released about you. Because I promise you, if what you're saying is true and it's worth way more than $2.5 million. Way more than that. You're undervaluing this tremendously. You're bringing forward the greatest discovery in the history of humanity. Contact. And you put a price tag of it at $2.5 million. That's what they ruined. I'm interested in how they came up with this number. It's an interesting number. I'd love to talk to his attorney. I've got so many questions. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. I mean, the suit's been put in. We'll see what happens. Only time will tell. And usually things like this move pretty slowly. But I can tell you, yeah, it doesn't look good for the sheriff's department. And honestly, it doesn't look good for David Grusch. Because if he does get $2.5 million, I can tell you his neighbors and his... the kids in the neighborhoods and the schools and the hospitals and the roads and the firefighters and definitely the police department are not going to like you, buddy. And they're not, yeah. It's just, obviously he's probably going to move with his $2.5 million, I would imagine. So yeah, man, it just doesn't look good. It doesn't look good for me. Honestly, if I was the sheriff's department, I would dig my heels in. I would dig my heels in, especially if this is standard protocol stuff. Yeah, but again, we'll see. We shall see. All right, so that's that. Actually, no, I wanted to comment on this because Average Chris, as always, he usually has some interesting viewpoints, especially when it comes to Dave Grusch. And so he writes, again, former veteran, Air Force, same walk of life, speaks the same language, understands all the 31 flavors, like he gets it, right? So Dave Grusch, the quote UFO whistleblower, was quote involuntarily admitted to Lue Adult Medical Psychiatric Service on October 1st, 2018. And he writes, probably a good starting point for why David Grusch, quote, walked away from his GS-15 equivalent position at NGA and believed the government is hiding UFOs. Yep. That makes sense. Um, Dave Grusch, plaintiff versus Jane Doe, individually and officially, and Michael L. Chapman, individually and officially. Serve Michael L. Chapman, Loudoun County Sheriff Department, 803 Succulent Road, Leesburg, Virginia. Why is one person's name being left out of this, but the other guy's name is being put in this? That's interesting. From yeah, that's interesting. Okay. And yeah, here's Chris. Chris is right. Yep. Grush was the subject of a petition for involuntary admission, or otherwise known as a temporary detention order. Now, a lot of people will say, oh, it's so disrespectful to talk about this. Why are you bringing it up? What does it matter? It matters. When you're making the biggest claim on the planet, people are going to want to know who you are. And this is just one journalist looking into your past. Imagine if there was fire to the smoke that you're saying is in the air. There would be hundreds of Ken Klippensteins coming after every moment of your life to really find out who you are. And we're not seeing that. Why? You have to ask yourself, why? Why is there only one Ken Klippenstein? If this was some sort of smear job, wouldn't you have 30 Ken Klippensteins? If the government controls the media and wanted to destroy David Grusch, they can do it, right? Just like that. And they sent one guy, Ken Klippenstein. That's what made the whole House of Cards crumble. The $2.5 million House of Cards. Woo. Man. The hoops you guys jump through to demonize people. I could not imagine if like a whole genuine research team, if there even exists much anymore, honestly, the way you've seen mainstream report on UFOs gives me little hope for anything else really they report on. I just don't think it's journalism anymore. I think a lot of it is cut and paste, and not because they're controlled or there's this fucking conspiracy theory, because it's lazy and it's easy and their audience is lazy and they want something easy to digest, something clippable, a headline, something that they could quote to their friends when they're at the fucking bar drinking their drink and pretending like they, run a section of the world. It's a joke. It's a joke. Our news is it's a business. It's a business model. What gets that click? What gets that eyeball to actually read? That's incredibly difficult. Just ask all of the newspapers that don't exist anymore. It's no longer an institution. It's really sad to say that. But the way you've seen mainstream media, the parts of it that have reported on this topic, have done surface level scratching. Even the 60 Minutes piece, surface level scratching. And if it was as interesting as people say and claim, there should be 10 60-minute pieces. there should be hundreds of reporters drooling and oozing at the chance. Like it, the way the podcast world reacted to Lue Elizondo with the frenzy in which they did, and a lot of that came, honestly, a lot of that came after a couple of interviews, and mine is one of those, because I was just a regular schmo who had 250 followers on his channel when I asked Lue Elizondo to come on my show. I had done the show for a year. I had to be like 250, 500 followers, something like that. I'd done the show for a full year before I'd ever asked Elizondo on. And once he came on my show, I think that opened the floodgates for a lot of other small, non-existent channels to go at him and he did, to his credit. Like, he did. But we should have seen that fervor, that excitement, that passion to get to know this guy from the actual news, from actual journalists. And they're not interested in this guy. Not really. Get your TV show, your cable TV show, by the way. It's cable. A lot of those shows that are on the History Channel are mostly watched by old people. And the advertisers don't pay a lot of money for those shows. They don't make a ton of money. They're not money makers, per se. The money makers are the courses that are sold on like Gaia TV. That's where the money's at. Yeah, man, it's just, there's nothing to this that screams, holy shit, this is so real. This is so real. All you've got is tech bros, and we're going to get into that in a little bit. Podcasters, and again, the occasional media hit that mostly dismisses it. Because I think, well, it could be, you know, man, I don't know. I don't want to just sit here and theorize, but like, yeah, again, the way the media reports on this, man, it just shows how terrible they are at doing real research. It really, really is. There's a couple bright spots in there, a couple people that really know what they're doing, again, that are on the fringe of that, you know, mainstream media. I'm thinking of the John Greenewalds, the Stephen Greenstreets, but I'm also thinking of like Emily Louise, and a couple of other researchers in that vein that do some really great stuff in this discussion. And a lot of the time they're vilified for it. You know, everybody wants the clickable thing. Everybody wants to hear the sexy thing. It's so difficult to combat it. It's so difficult. And when you do combat it, they just replace it with 10 other things that it could. Ooh, you're not thinking about this. It's a classic sort of bait and switch thing that I don't think a lot of believers do it intentionally. I think it's just their belief system defending their fragility as best it can, you know, like and I guess we'll kind of, this will sort of leak into the spaces discussion. You know, there was, man, first of all, everybody like, share, subscribe if you haven't already. Definitely like the channel, the show. Helps with the algorithm. But so when I go to work, and I think I've said this a few times, I got an earbud in, I'm driving around, doing my thing, and I'll just listen, most of the times anonymously. And there is this, we've talked about it a billion times, I don't want to harp on it, but you know, 48-hour Twitter spaces, 70-hour Twitter spaces, where they have folks who are clearly clearly mentally unwell, criminals in some cases, wanted in multiple states, that are completely unhinged in the things that they're saying and that they believe. And they are welcomed with open arms in these spaces. And they are just, their belief systems and their fantasy, and they're prone to believe things. They're used for content. They're farmed for content, for people to laugh at, and for people to get a kick out of and go, holy shit, you got to hear what this fucking guy is talking about. And I even admit, I hear it the first time and I'm like, this is fucking nuts. It's crazy. It's kind of fun. There's a guilty pleasure to it. But you do it every day for hours at a time. And I think you are pouring gasoline on TNT that's sitting on a powder keg. It's all fun and games until someone gets hurt. It's yucky. It doesn't look good. And I listened to it for 2 hours this morning, and it got me in a real yucky place. It got me really pissed off. I was so angry because I was like, how are all of these people participating in this guy's delusions, in his mental illness, in his crazy thoughts? And I mean, we've talked about the corn people. This guy talks about, I mean, all sorts of stuff. He calls himself a scientist, and the support and the love and the kick gloves that he's treated with. It's not like if someone comes in like that, you give them their moment to take off their crazy plane, land their crazy plane, and you say, hey, thank you, man. We appreciate you being here. It's always fun to hear you, but we're going to recycle you down and just bring somebody else up that's been wanting to come up, if that's cool. And before he even gets to answer, you just take him down. That you want to do every day? No issues with that whatsoever. You know, don't take away something from somebody that's in that sort of place. But to do the opposite of that and just sort of like shovel slop in front of him for him to consume and really build this belief system is not right either. Personally, I just wouldn't let him in at all if it was my space, but I think he would know better than to come into my space. Yeah, man, I think it's, again, only time will tell, but I think always those things always donate. They always end up poorly. Pat Calabria, thank you so damn much for the $5 donation, man. I truly appreciate it. What's going on in the chat? Sorry, I've been ignoring it. Oh, there's John. What's up, John? Thanks, man. Yeah, I'm sorry I'm not watching the chat. I'm terrible with chats, guys. Sorry. It's just not something I do very well. I've tried. That's why I need a small little producer on the show. to look at this chat for me so I don't miss anything important. That's why super chats help. You know, I'll never miss one of those because of the fucking charm that goes off and everything. Anyway, John Greenewald, you're the man. Thanks for being here, bud. And, you know, that's the other thing, man. Like, I know, like, the guys who are really trying, there's a lot of people in my show that love this show, but they'll never say anything, you know, like, they'll never, like, you know, promote it as much as, and I get it. Like, I totally get it. Nobody wants to talk about, you know, the angry UFO guy. You know, it's like, but they love the show. They love the show because I get to say the shit that, you know, I feel like a lot of guys don't get to say. Because, you know, like, shit, dude, nobody wants to rock any boats. You know, especially when you're just trying to present information in a non-biased way. And so I get to play a different role. I get to play, you know, the announcer at the side of the wrestling arena. I get to play a completely different role. Call John, please. Like John Greenewald? He's like, your chat is telling me to call in, but don't know why or don't know how. Okay. I didn't have a call in. Why are you guys asking John to call into the show? I mean, I could give John a call. John, you want to call in? If you got something to say, I'd love to have you. I haven't talked to you in a while on the show. Let's see. I'll get you a link, bud. You know, and if anybody else wants to, I guess, call in, you're more than welcome to. All right, let me see here. I'll send this to John through text first. Just so nobody floods the chat. Whatever. But yeah, John's busy, you guys. Like, John's got a son and, you know, he's soccer practice and stuff like that. Dude is busy all the time. So, John, no pressure, man. I'm not really sure why people are asking you to come in. Give him hell, John. Give me hell, John. Oh man, that's so funny. Okay. Anyway, please, not John Strader. Yeah, that nobody wants John Strader here. So that would be awful. Well, they probably want to. Yeah, that's true. They probably want to ask you about this FOIA situation, John. Oh, look, John called in. What's up, John? Can you hear me?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, man, I can. Thanks for calling in.
I'm sitting in a parking lot in a park, so it's not studio ready. So I apologize for that. I'm like roasting on.
Well, I know it's hot as hell out there, so I appreciate you taking the time. You didn't have to do so. I wasn't really sure why people were telling you to call in. I didn't have a call-in link up. I wasn't doing a call-in show. But I'm assuming the reason why. Wait, go ahead.
I said you are now, darn it.
Yeah, now it's on. Okay, so I'm assuming the reason why people ask you on is because of the I guess the way Ken Klippenstein did the FOIA when he was looking up the information on Grusch. What are your thoughts on that? Do you have any takes, John? Any hot takes on how the FOIA was put in?
Yeah, I mean, by his own admission, he has his sources. I mean, he's a journalist and he does his job. I've known of Ken and known Ken for many years. Anybody who dabbles in FOIA knows his name, and he had popped into a space of mine, and it was like one of the first spaces, or the first, I don't remember. But long story short, it ended up having like over 10,000 views on it. And for a space, from what I understand, that's kind of a lot. And he popped in as a surprise, and he gave kind of a background of it. And yeah, I mean, he got a tip, which most journalists do. So people blew that out of proportion and essentially said that, yeah,
No, you don't say, John. People blew that out of
yeah,
proportion?
yeah, go figure, right?
No.
And that's what's frustrating about it. Just like taking myself out of the story, right? It doesn't matter if I'm skeptical about Grusch or believe him or whatever. What's frustrating is that people develop a story and they create a conspiracy and they just roll with it, right? It doesn't matter about evidence. It doesn't matter about what's real or not. They just roll with it. And so the conspiracy then was seeded that the US government like sought out Ken to feed him the info to discredit Grusch. And, that's really not what happened if you listen to what his story is.
Right.
So I'm not here to defend him or defend what happened, but rather just kind of like, say my frustration with how that whole thing unfolded. And you fast forward that now the sheriff's department is being sued. That I, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know how much chance he has of winning $2.5 million.
Yeah.
And I don't know how much you want to chat about this, but I don't see $2.5 million going his way. I mean, defamation suits and stuff like that. You need to prove the damage and be really good at it. And you look at the celebrity cases of defamation and stuff like that, and like real celebrities, not like UFO celebrities.
Right.
And they have a very tough time proving it. So that I'm not so sure he's gonna, come out in the end a millionaire here. And the bottom line for me is I think he may, and this is just a personal opinion, but may by doing this have brought more attention to what he didn't want people to know about.
That's
than if he
exactly
just
what
let
I just
it
said.
go.
Exactly what
Yeah,
I've just
and I'm
been
sorry I
saying.
missed that. I didn't hear
No,
that part.
no,
but-
that's okay. That's okay. I love that. I've got the same sort of mindset as John Greenewald. I'm just kind of patting myself on the back here. Yeah, man. It doesn't make any sense. And here's the thing: even if he only gets, let's say they settle for 100,000, just because the sheriff's office wants him to be like, okay, just go away. Like that's still, dude, that's more than a year's salary that he could just do the UFO thing with, or whatever. I don't know, man. It doesn't feel authentic. And yes, when you talk about Ken Klippenstein and you hear his version of it through those Twitter spaces, it sounds like a journalist looking for a scoop on a guy with the biggest claim on the planet.
That's right. And he's done this quite a few times, again, just because I followed Ken and I'm sorry, I'll get hate mail for this, but I respect what he does. He's done amazing FOIA work over the years.
Yeah.
And that's not an endorsement for all of his personal views, but rather he does the legwork. And he's posted for tips quite a few times, and he'll post out there, and he has a reach that extends far beyond myself and probably most people listening combined.
Right,
and,
because his whole career is working within the Department of Defense and the minutia of how those things work, because that's what he reports on. That's literally his playpen right there. And go ahead, yeah.
No, and that's his. And I'm in the car, so if there's a delay and
no worries. No, it's all good.
But yeah, that's his beat. And so it doesn't surprise me that by him putting out a notice, somebody's going to feed him a tip, and they fed him a tip on this. And I think what the court case is going to come down to, because I don't have as much experience with state FOIA law as I do with federal FOIA law. But I, out of morbid curiosity and my own learning, I looked into this after it came out, and Virginia state law with their what they call a Sunshine Act, or their own Freedom of Information Act, because every state has an equivalent to the federal FOIA, or most of them do. Right. And there's going to be a gray area in this case, because if you notice the documents that were released, they had Grusch's name redacted. They were not medical records, as the internet lore, kind of took over and said there. It was police records. And where the gray area is, I think the judge is going to have to separate the morality behind this versus the legality. And I think that they're probably, and this is my 2 cents, personal opinion, and doesn't mean anything to anybody, but if you were to ask me, I would say that it will probably be a loss because it is enough in the gray area that the sheriff's office redacted the personally identifying information. And it was Ken who put together public record to then essentially connect Grusch to it. But if you read the documents, and again, this is going to come down to interpretation by the judge and jury if it goes that far.
Right.
But there was enough removed that it could have been anybody in the house, even a guest. So as silly as that sounds, in the legal sense, it really didn't identify Grusch. So I think that that's what it's going to come down to, is that the definition in Virginia FOIA, they kind of followed it, but admittedly, it's in a gray area. So I can kind of see it go either way. I just think that when it comes to transparency, this is one of those instances where the government, albeit a state government and local government this time, but a government is actually a bit transparent and they're getting sued for it. Right. And that's why these cases are going to be very interesting to watch, because away from it being Grusch and away from it being UFO whistleblower kind of related stuff, this is Freedom of Information Act case law. And so what happens here really does start to define transparency with the U.S. government. So it's going to be very interesting to watch, to be honest with you.
No, that's an amazing point. Also, I think here's sort of my view on the $2.5 million number, John, is he just put a price tag on how, because what is he's saying, you destroyed my value by $2.5 million essentially in this suit, right?
I mean, that's what he's saying.
Yeah. So you're saying
there's no breakdown.
Yeah. So the way I take it is you're putting a $2.5 million price tag on disclosure. Wouldn't it be worth like $1 billion?
Well, I mean, I think the price tag, to be fair here, is what he is saying that he's damaged by the Intercept article profiling the documents that got out.
Right, but he's only known... Sorry to cut you off, John. I know we're on a delay, but he's only known for being publicly anyway, as the UFO whistleblower guy. Like, that's his, it's almost an IP. If you're asking for $2.5 million, it sounds like you're like, oh, you destroyed my IP. You destroyed my potential to make money with this story. That's what it feels like anyway.
I mean, that's where it comes down to the breakdown of where did they come up with that figure.
Right.
And I are they breaking down that he can't, because he was working in, and this is well known, I'm not blowing anything personal here, but it was known that he was working in real estate around the time that, he started to come out.
Right.
He was working in real estate in Colorado. So are they saying that he can't get a real estate job because of this, and they multiply it by X amount of years? Are they saying that it's government work? That's going to be a tough sell, because he had already exited the government and was working in the private sector as a real estate agent. So yeah, I mean, there's kind of like a lot of question marks of where the hell did $2.5 million come from? Or what you said, is it connected to, hey, I could have went on the UFO circuit and made X amount of dollars.
Right.
To me, that's more at the bottom of the list. I don't believe that would be.
No, that makes sense.
Doing, I think it would be, career wise, but again, how is he calculating? And then from a legal standpoint, because I love these types of things, he's going to have to prove that. Like, he's going to have to prove that the Intercept article truly damaged his ability to get a job. And I know that there's a lot of details about him at the end of his government work and his clearance issues. And did he lose his clearance? Does he still have it? If he ties that $2.5 million into that part of his career and his ability to get a job, he's then going to have to prove like why he still had his clearance and why he was 100% in good standing up until the day the Intercept article came out. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So it's like, if that truly damaged his government work, then what's in the whistleblower complaint / the attacks that he said that he was undergoing, and the security clearance issues and stuff like that.
Right.
And then you fast forward to his issue getting into a skiff because he didn't have proper clearance or whatever.
Yeah.
To me, there's a lot of details there that people aren't dealing with. So his biggest fans are kind of saying, oh, that, it's kind of irrelevant. The guy deserves millions and millions of dollars.
No, it's totally
you
relevant.
break this down.
Yeah. No, it's totally
Absolutely.
relevant. Like, I mean, if he's if he's having a hard time finding work before the Intercept article, like, how can you prove in a court of law that that Intercept article then changed that trajectory? To even worse?
That's absolutely right. Now,
to even worse? Like, how do you get worse?
How do you get $2.5 million worse?
Right.
And that's what's interesting to see this play out is, how are you going to prove those damages? So let's say the sheriff's department really made a mistake. Again, I think it's a gray area, but let's just say that they're able to prove that. Now you're going to have to prove that there were those types of damages. Will he get a smaller amount? Maybe. You had mentioned settling earlier. I don't see that, just simply because, again, this is a transparency issue. This transcends above David Grusch, as much as his fans don't want to see that. When cases of Freedom of Information Act are litigated, I'll say it again, those are very important cases to transparency and to government openness. And if he really was damaged by it, then sure, I'd like to see him get compensated if there was truly damage done. But I also want to see the proof of that. I mean, I know this is a Colorado state taxpayer thing, but I'm still a taxpayer in the U.S. So that's why I've always been interested in situations like where does transparency outweigh that? Did they cover their butts when it comes to the eyes of Virginia FOIA, or did they really screw up? And in that case, then fine, let a jury of his peers find it in his favor, and let him prove $2.5 million. But it's just really bizarre, a year after the fact, and now you're rejuvenating the attention to a very sensitive issue. And it's one that I thought, if I'm wrong, didn't he come out and say that he was and this is to his credit, I'm going to compliment him here, that he sought help and that he worked with those issues. I thought that he came out and said that he was proud to have gone through that and got help and got better, and anybody who does that should be commended. So that again is meant to be a compliment. So I think that may play a role also. It's like, how did we go from, this is part of my past, it is what it is, I sought help and here we are, I'm better, or I worked on myself, to damages, $2.5 million in damages. It'll be quite an interesting thing to see play out for numerous reasons.
Do you well, from the legislative standpoint, from a state perspective, if it does set a precedent with FOIA from a state perspective, do you think that will leak into a federal sort of thing? And what's the best case scenario? Like, what would you like to see come out of this, John? Like, what would be like the best thing for FOIA or people getting more information?
So that's a great question. And the first part of that, will it be used in the future? Case law is often cited in litigation in the future. Now, this will definitely affect Virginia state law. How much it can bleed into federal law, again, not being an attorney, but I generally don't see state law decisions generally. There's exceptions to this, but when it comes to U.S. Code Chapter 5, Section 552, which is FOIA, you don't really see state cases because the FOIA state laws are much different than federal law. But those decisions, if something like this comes up on a federal level, then yes, I believe then you can see the citation and go, look, the agency was transparent here. They were a little too transparent, got knocked back for it. So yeah, I mean, depending upon how this plays out in those types of situations, you can see that cited in the future. But what you will see, I think, more discussed is, again, that transparency issue. And I'm not sure how I want to see this play out. I'll put that up front. I really don't know, because I want to see what his damages are. I mean, if this is a number that was just made up, then that's silly. I mean, if they messed up, then they messed up and there should be compensation. But is it $2.5 million? And that's what I'd love to see broken down. And in the complaint that was published, I didn't see a breakdown unless I missed it, but I didn't see a breakdown. So I'd like to see that. But it's going to come down to that legal gray area and the morality versus legality of this issue. It is a very sensitive one. Me personally, I'm doubtful of Grusch's claims, but not because I read in the Intercept story that he had,
Right.
whatever you want to label it in the past as published by the Intercept. I don't judge it by that. Like, I didn't
Right.
change my view against Grusch either direction when that article came out.
Right.
I think I said, and I was surprised a little that the details came out. But then after you kind of get through that initial surprise, you realize, oh, well, public record connects the address to David Grusch, but the FOIA produced a redacted document. And that's what this, I think, is going to come down to answer the last part of your question, how I think this is really going to turn out. It's not a want or desire, but I think it's going to come down to there's no language in Virginia state FOIA law that makes them essentially try and predict if other public records can be used to deduce the identity of a redacted individual. And that's kind of this gray. Those that are big fans of David Grusch are going to completely disagree with me and say, no, he deserves his money and they screwed him over, and that's fine. But they're going to have kind of a tough thing to prove there, in my opinion. May turn to his favor. I know a lot of people are going to want that, but it's going to be a fight.
Even if it does turn to his favor, let's say he does win the $2.5 million, and let's say he does prove in court. Eventually, we're going to find out what that was. So if it turned out to be, it affected his ability to get a job with top secret clearance. And because he still's got, another 20, 25 years worth of viable working career left, that's roughly worth $2.5 million with pain and anguish as well. And humility, I guess, being humiliated. But does that prove his claims? No, it doesn't.
No, it definitely. No, I don't think any of this. Well, let me say this. I personally feel no. It has nothing to do with his claims either way. It's silly.
But that's it'll be taken as a win like that though by his fans.
But, absolutely, but people will. Yeah, people will. So if it does end up in his favor, even if he's awarded punitive damages of $1, they're going to erupt and say, "See, he's telling the truth," and they will make that leap. And I don't mean to make light of that situation, because of course the allegation against the sheriff's department is serious. But when I'm talking about a broader scope and people that are, just they're looking for any glimmer of hope that he's telling the truth, they're going to use that and say, "See, the case was found in his favor, ergo he must be telling the truth." One doesn't have anything to do with the other. I mean, this is purely about FOIA and Virginia state law and to see if they made a mistake. And I'd be surprised if the sheriff's department settled. I really would. I think they're going to stand their ground.
I hope so.
And they're going to speak. I do too, for the sake of to see this play out, not for, again, broader scope, freedom of information, transparency, stuff like that. That's why I want to see these things play out and see what happens.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to be, like you said, it's going to be interesting to see what happens here in the next, I guess, 6 months to a year, because these things take forever to play out, if it even goes that far. But yeah, I agree with you. I think it's bringing unwanted attention. It's literally, John, that he testified in front of Congress on the 26th of July. This article came out on the 25th of July. It literally like a year later from when all this stuff was kind of happening to him. And now he's kind of rehashing it with this stuff. And it's like, it's a little odd. It's what took you a year to file this suit, first of all. Like, I don't know. It just doesn't smell good.
That was a question mark for me. The timing was odd around the anniversary of the testimony. Yeah, I personally, I think there was kind of no reason to wait. I mean, obviously stuff like this takes time to put together, but hey, if a government agency sent out information that I felt was, against law and it hurt my reputation as David Grusch felt it did his, I don't think I'd wait a year. I
Yeah.
mean, I think I would jump right on top of that and go, we got a problem here. So yeah, I'm not really sure, but in his defense, maybe it just took that long to find an attorney. Maybe he needed somebody to do it pro bono. That's just a guess. I don't know if his attorney is pro bono or not, but maybe in fairness, that part took time. So yeah, there's a lot of things at play here. It's just a shame that not only David Grusch, but other voices in this conversation are so quiet nowadays. I and I'm speaking more generally there, but you see a lot of voices that have just kind of fallen off the map. And as the community has been anxiously awaiting this op-ed and it gets delayed, and then all of a sudden we see a lawsuit, those kinds of stories. The book, Lue Elizondo's book coming out, he's been fairly mum on social media. You've got a couple of these voices that have just kind of fallen off because, with all their respective reasonings, I guess. But it's just it's an interesting time in the U.S. conversation.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. Well, I mean, we were talking, I was going to talk later on in the episode that, like, you've got guys like J. Christopher King predicting, there's going to be a lot of people in the UFO field that are going to be dropping out of this. They're going to be very erratic and upset. It's just like, what the hell is going on? What's coming? I'm kind of anxious. I'm on pins and needles, but yeah, I mean, silence is, I think, just as deafening as some of the words that have been shared by some of the guys that have been quiet for a long time. And I think, as more of this stuff unravels, it doesn't look good. Like, did you get a chance? What are your thoughts on the first few chapters of Elizondo's book? There's been some weird stuff, especially when it comes to sort of, bragging about torturing people and among other things.
Yeah, when going back to the comment you made about the post on big things are happening and coming soon and people are dropping out and ontological shock, whatever the post is, those types of things. It's like every few months, the same cast of characters, they like rotate with these predictions that something big is going to happen. And I think that they don't realize the damage that they're doing. They're just trying to like rile up their echo chamber. And it gets very frustrating for people like me to see that where, and you and I are going to differ on this part of what I'm about to say, but I feel that there's parts of this conversation that are very serious. We need to have it. And there's really something, I think, to these phenomena. I think there's quite a few different facets to it. But these people that like keep doing these grandiose predictions and coming soon and building things up, you go back now like 5, 6, 7 years. What was it? 2017 when this all broke out, the New York Times and Elizondo.
It's been 7 years. It's been 7 years.
Yeah. I almost said it out loud. I was like, wait, is that right? So yeah, like 7 years that this has been going on. And you go back and you look at these same cast of characters giving the same types of predictions over and over and over, and nothing mind-blowing has come about. It's just more controversy, stories. So anyway, not to go off on a tangent, and I really do feel like I took over your show.
No, I mean it's John Greenewald for F's sake. I don't know if you're like your kids in the van or something. You got it on speakerphone. Go ahead. You were saying where he's not in the car, right? Yeah, he's not in the car.
Oh no! I think we faded out there, but no, he's at soccer practice right now. He's at a field I can't get near, so I can't really watch him. So
okay.
I was actually going to do a space when I saw.
Oh, that's so awesome!
Pop in and say
okay, cool. Well, what were you going to do a space about? Just out of curiosity, since you said that.
Oh, I'm just going to pop on and do like an AMA or something. I did a couple spaces I don't know, like 6 months ago or whatever.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
ironically, while
Well,
I
I think it was the
was
Ken
sitting in a car
Klippenstein
waiting,
stuff, right? Like, I think it was the last
yeah,
one you did.
that was like either the first, yeah, that was either the first or second one, and
Yeah,
then I did one or two more, and like literally in this parking lot that I'm in now.
that's
Because the
so
way, I don't
funny.
know if you've ever been to Valencia,
Yeah.
but the big park up here, it's kind of hard to get to some of the fields when they're all split up. So I love to watch them, but when I can't watch them, I just kind of work in the car or do a
Yeah.
space or something. But
Oh, that's
anyway,
cool.
yeah, that's what I was going to. Saw you were
Okay.
live, and yeah, I
Well,
popped into the
dude,
chat, and it's
I love that you're here. I love it. Because I haven't spoken to you in a while. And so yeah, I've got some other questions. I do have one from the audience. And if you guys are in the audience, we've got, I've got another, I don't know, John, how long were you going to be in a space for? How much time do you have? I've got an hour. After that, I'm pretty much done.
well, I don't want to take over your show.
I mean, it's John
I
Greenewald,
should have.
dude. It's John Greenewald. John Greenewald. I love the fact that you're here, man. I love it. But okay, look, if you stay as long as you want, don't feel any pressure. There's whatever, dude. I don't even know why people were asking you to come in here, but I'm happy that you answered the call. Wise Monkey was asking in the chat, why, ask John, why doesn't Lue Elizondo, Mellon, Grusch, Corbell, Knapp, and etc. do FOIAs, as they know where everything is and they could get disclosure done in a minute?
I have asked myself that question, and even publicly, way too many times, and I've never gotten an answer. I don't know. I've put the call out that I am happy to help anybody. Obviously, it encroaches on classified territory if what they know is classified. So, that's gonna zero that out. But as David Grusch, as a prime example, if you're general enough, then it's not classified, right? So if he's telling the truth, it flies through Dopser because according to him, it's general enough. Then there should be certain details that could be shared that people like me can use. It doesn't have to be me. There's quite a few FOIA researchers out there to go after. And why they don't, I honestly, I don't, I have zero clue. And anybody can prove this. Obviously, I'm hated in certain circles because they feel my interpretation of either certain documents or stories or my skepticism about certain claims. They think that like takes over. But as what I feel anyway, my history shows is that it doesn't matter how I personally feel about something. I will file the FOIA anyway. Like I will go after it. It doesn't matter if I don't believe it's going to come up with a no records.
Right.
I will absolutely challenge my own beliefs, and I will file for whatever. So long-winded way of saying, yeah, where are those vague general tips? And I don't know where they are. And then they don't need to share it with anybody either. They can file their own FOIA. And so I really don't have an answer to that because I it, I'm trying to find the best way to say it. I scratch my head because they utilize certain bloggers, right, to kind of
Mm-hmm.
toot their own horn. We have to all agree on that there are certain bloggers out there that say I'm a journalist, and they write these fluff articles and fluff pieces, and they use their anonymous sources and former senior government officials. I'm sorry, we know who they are. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's a list of like 4 people that are feeding them these quotes and grandiose headlines.
Can I
Why
take a
aren't they
guess?
feeding?
Chris Sharp, Marique von Kloppenstick. I'm trying to think, who are the other two? Matt Ford, and who's the fourth? Did I get 3 of the 4? 3 out of 4 ain't bad.
I I would say yes. I mean it's and why aren't they out there doing FOIAs? Why aren't they
Right.
trying? And if they don't think the FOIA process works, that's okay. Just post it and say why you think it doesn't work. At least try. And everybody that you just named has used my FOIA stuff.
Right.
All of those
Yep.
guys. So FOIA produces stuff that they obviously like.
It's
and it obviously goes
produced
to
the
their narrative.
best stuff we have so far. It's produced the best stuff we have so far. Period. Full stop. Like, there's nothing outside of FOIA that is. I think that name one thing. One thing that's been better than FOIA, that FOIA leaks, or not leaks, but actual FOIA requests have brought clarity to, especially in this UFO discussion.
You're exactly right. You're speaking my language when you say that. So the question is, why are those guys not using any type of insider information to FOIA anything? Because clearly it may not be the smoking gun, by my own admission, but it's going to be enough to give them more puzzle pieces. So why not? And I don't have an answer to that. And that's what makes me even more angry and even more skeptical about that entire group of people, anonymous sources and then some,
right,
that are feeding this information, because they can unlock the keys to all of this, or at least puzzle pieces that can get us to the keys, and they don't. And that bothers me a lot. They're more willing to take anonymously sourced quotes and put them in font size 300 headlines, and that's good enough. When
right.
in reality, any type of journalist, despite their personal beliefs, should go out and post something on X looking for additional leads. And yeah, that's a shout out to Ken there.
Right, I was just about to say,
doing that,
yeah, right.
he will get that.
Yeah, try getting the source with the FOIA. That might help when it comes to your claims.
And yet they don't. And so I wish and hope that someday they will. I'm looking forward. You asked earlier about Elizondo's book. I'm looking forward to it. I mean, yeah, some chapters leaked, some pages. Mobile versions got a little bit more than desktop versions, for whatever reason that is.
Oh, that's funny. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, it was like four chapters on the desktop version of Google Books, but the mobile version had links to about 180 pages of like the 300 plus. So yeah, it was a lot.
It is funny. At the end of the day, John, it's always funny. It's always funny. Like, it's always something we can fucking laugh at, man.
Well, it's never easy. You know what I mean? Like, it's never black and white. Never easy. There's always some crazy thing that's happening. And you look at this book, and I'm not saying anything other than the observation that since day one of the announcement, back in I think it was announced in like 2021. When did the Hollywood Reporter profile it, or whatever it was? Hollywood Reporter, I think it was. I don't have it in front of me, but it's been years since the book of Lue Elizondo was dropped. And it was like, well, like, presidents don't even advertise their book that far in advance. I mean, it was like insane how long in advance this thing was advertised. And I'm laughing about it because I just thought it was a little bit silly, because it's like, okay, a year in advance, I get it. 6 months, totally get it.
Yeah.
Years, that doesn't make sense.
Four years.
And I will prove, ridiculous. And I guarantee that the Dopser review process does not accumulate or encompass, I should say, the majority of that time. So people will they'll use that excuse, and they'll say, well, it was Dopser, it was the government, and it was the review process. But I don't think it was. And I've got a few FOIA cases now that yielded no results when it came to his book. So I think that process was probably 6 months ish, maybe a year, but I don't think it would be more than that. So again, I think people are going to try and blame the government, but it's not going to be the government. But that was just the first of like some other crazy things that happened. If I don't know if you recall this, but a couple of years ago, I had asked when the book was going to be released to HarperCollins, and HarperCollins gave me a date back then that seemed like so far in the future, it had to be wrong.
Yeah.
but they gave me a date of September of 2024. And back then I was like, oh my God, there's no way it's taken that long.
Yeah.
And you look at it's coming out about a month from that. Now they retracted their statement, but I had published that out there and then they retracted it. So again, nothing is easy. And now you've got the
Yeah.
book half going online a month prior to release. It's like, what else can go wrong here? Oh, and the other thing was the title of the book, which was put online as disclosure. If you remember that, and that was put online with a synopsis that Lue Elizondo had to post and say, "Oh no, that's not correct." When the book is announced, you'll hear it from me.
Yeah.
So it's like the whole ride has been kind of like this crazy, nothing went right kind of ride, and yeah, I don't understand. It's like why things can't be easy here when a book comes out. I don't.
It doesn't have the aura and the juice of someone who's bringing a big truth forward, because if he was, the PR team that would be behind him to make sure there were not hiccups like there have been in the release of just this book, let alone anything else, but just this book, it doesn't make any sense, man. And the only thing that does make sense is, oh, there is no PR team because there's nothing really there. They can't get to the bottom or verify any of the things that the claims are being made. And so therefore, there's not going to be a PR company and a firm of agents drooling at their mouth for a guy who can't verify any of the claims that he's making.
Yeah, I'm going to respectfully disagree. They're going to make a lot of money on this. I think that.
You think? Well, the book, yes, the book, yes. But I'm saying, if this was, do you think this book is going to have a media rounds like, to me, if this is groundbreaking book stuff, it would have the PR of Wolverine and Deadpool. Like you'd be hearing about this book. You'd be on the Today Show. And who knows? Maybe we still see that, but I haven't seen any whiff of that at all. And the clumsiness in which it's been handled, and I mean, even the book cover, like none of this is sort of whiffing to me of anything serious. Will it sell a lot of copies? Absolutely. But so did Skinwalkers at the Pentagon. That doesn't, people buy books, but to me that doesn't, I don't know if that's an indicator of whether or not. Go ahead.
No, I think that this will do better than Skinwalkers at the Pentagon. I think that it will make media rounds. I don't think the media cares about verifying the evidence. I hate to say it, but you have a mainstream media thirsty for this stuff, and Lue Elizondo is a person that can kind of quench that thirst, as weird as that sounds. But he's the former government guy who's come out for years. Now he's got even bigger claims in the book. And anybody who saw the preview can see they are bigger claims in the book. He dodged the whole alien saying this is 100% aliens. He kind of dodged that. He hinted at it. He danced around it. He dropped his breadcrumbs. But I was always intrigued that he never went 100% the whole ride. He never went on that bandwagon of this is definitely aliens, kind of like Grusch did. I know he said NHI and not aliens, but regardless, he kind of stayed a little bit more neutral, but leaning towards, hey, I'm hinting here, but stayed away from the A word. And you read just like the opening pages of the preview, and he says up front that these are piloted by, an intelligence that aren't human, that are not from this planet. We're not alone in the universe. All definitive statements. And that to me was a very surprising shift. And then when you go through the book and you see details about his remote viewing, and you see details about what he called being the czar of torture, and what he described as like getting together with other people with the same ability, if you want to call it that, and was able to call it torture. I don't know, but obviously affect this person at Guantanamo. I'm not sure how that's going to play with the media.
Yeah.
If that's profiled, the publishing company may have like their cover questions, and they'll skim the surface and probably not focus on the torture stuff.
Yeah.
But because that doesn't play well in the mainstream media. Mainstream media loves UFOs and aliens, not so much torture. So I
Right.
think that will probably be their PR staff. But it's just bizarre. It's a weird shift. I'm looking forward to seeing it because I'll use it. I'll
Right.
file FOIAs regardless of me being a bit skeptical about the torture of Guantanamo Bay via psychic weaponry or
Yeah.
whatever. But
Yeah.
I'll use it. Go from there.
Well, I am curious because you and I have talked about the Wilson Davis documents, and when you kind of pointed out to me, because you and I have read scripts before, and when you were like, doesn't it read a little bit like a script? And then I went back and reread it, and I'm like, yes, it does read like a script. Yeah. And that's exactly what his book read like to me. It read like a shitty, cheaper version of a Dan Brown novel. It was like, the Da Vinci Codes for dummies. Like, it just wasn't as good, not as polished, but it had that feel, especially when he was and I don't know about you, John, but like, there's that moment where he talks about meeting Jay Stratton in this office and this other woman, this mystery woman who he gives some really weird name to. And the description of this woman is his wife, like a 6-foot blonde Russian lady who knew about Cuban coffee. Like, I don't know, man. It read like I think he's going to obviously try and make this into a movie script. I think that's the next step after this book, which I think it will be a bestseller. It won't shock me if it's a bestseller. It's not going to be tough to get on a bestseller list.
I don't know if you saw this post of mine about 6 months ago, but when I was searching around for Dopser reviews that Lue Elizondo submitted, I was clearly looking for the stuff about his book or maybe articles or whatever, but discovered that there was a script written by Leslie Kane and a few other producers that had Lue Elizondo's character within it. And because Elizondo was by name in this, what they called a fictional script, they had to have Dopser review it because Elizondo was feeding them information essentially for this fiction, what they called fiction script. Right. And the reason I bring that up is it's kind of clear that he's being integrated already into entertainment projects that by their own wording is fictionalized. Yeah. And it kind of makes you wonder, like, okay, well, what else are we going to see here? And my guess is if he hasn't had this book optioned already, I would be surprised. I would venture to guess that in the next 3 to 6 months, you will see a headline that says that his book was optioned and in development somewhere. But I think that that's probably something you're going to see.
Without a doubt. I mean, I know for sure that's something that that he was working on. Similar when he was pitching TV shows and taking meetings on behalf of production companies. He was taking network notes without telling the production company that shot the show that he was going to do that. I don't know, man. I feel if there, I agree with you. Yes, there will be a production company that options this script, but I have a feeling it'll be the same production value that you got from Tom DeLonge's movie. I don't think it'll be a big studio. I'll just put it that way. I don't think it'll be a big studio, but I could be wrong. Maybe it is. I mean, look what they did with Travis Walton. So, if they could do that with Travis Walton, Lord knows what they could do with this super soldier who's torturing people through fucking psychic powers.
Yep, that's exactly what I was going to say. Let's take ourselves away from any type of skepticism to his story. Put yourself in entertainment. We've both worked in the business a while.
Yeah.
You look at this as a real person, a counterintelligence agent with the Department of Defense, that's a remote viewer that had connections to Guantanamo Bay, terrorism, UFOs, aliens. We're not alone in the universe. My
Yeah.
God, that like combined every
Yeah.
entertainment blockbuster all into one life
Yeah.
rights story. I don't know, man. You might see, true or not, it doesn't matter.
I think you're right.
The last
I think you're right. Now that you put it that way, yeah, I think, yeah, I mean, if it's, I don't know, man. I just don't see how it can't come off cheesy as fuck. Like, I don't care what scriptwriter you put to this. Like, they're gonna read this and they're gonna be like, even I couldn't make up this much bullshit. And it'll be a Jason Bourne film. It'll I think what it'll happen, and this happens a lot, and I'm sure you can vouch for this, where you come into a studio with an idea on a person or a thing, and by the time the executives in the studios get their claws into it, it's a completely different movie by the time it grinds out of the grinder at the other end of the thing. So yeah, I think it'll be similar to where they put, like, in front of the Blair Witch Project, this is based on a true story. I think they could put that in front of their movie and then put anything else after that title card and it's gonna fly. But man, I don't know. You're right. Like, dude, as I'm thinking of it, I'm like literally talking through and thinking about it. I'm like, yeah, it could be fun. It could be a fun, like, new American James Bond. A UFO American James Bond. That's Lue Elizondo.
And I think that it's probably being pitched already. It's probably being sold. It's probably sold.
It's probably sold. It's probably. Well, if it was in development, we definitely would. If it was sold, we would have heard about it, I think.
Being facetious.
Yeah.
I think in my opinion, probably around the corner. And again, all you have to do is look at the documents from the DoD. He's already being integrated into scripts. So I think it's either a matter of time or it's already been done where he is the central character. And yeah, you have a blockbuster and it'll be completely fictionalized. But when it comes out, this is going to be the problem. When it comes out, even though it's completely fictionalized, but quote unquote based on a real person or true story, whatever, everybody will think that loves him will think it's a documentary.
Yes.
And they're like, hey, can you believe that can you believe he flew over the Pacific by himself with a cape?
Oh my God.
It's that kind of silly. That's how silly the conversation.
We're in for a world of hurt, John.
In my opinion, it's not going to help.
No.
And I will be very interested to see how the publicity tour goes. And again, anybody who's listening, remove yourself from your personal opinion, whether you believe him or not. Yeah. And you look at that terrorist stuff, that alone, I don't think will resonate well on the big stage. So I think that will not be dealt with at all. And if it is dealt with, I think you're going to see some critique on this. And
I can tell you, if it makes it to blockbuster status, people are going to read the book and they're going to be like, hey, why are you guys making a movie about someone who's bragging about torturing people through remote viewing powers? And did you guys check on this? Like, how true is this? I think you're going to get a lot of journalists asking those questions.
We'll see. And it comes down to what our journalists are going to do their due diligence, because in these press tours and stuff, they make a list of like 5 to 10 questions that they want to that they want the media outlet to ask Lue Elizondo. And my guess, number one on the list is not going to be about Guantanamo. You're going to have a journalist that gets an interview that actually does their homework and sees some of the more controversial claims in there and starts digging on that. And for years now, I've said that I was more interested in his background with the NPSMS than I was with his stories about ATIP. And that now is kind of further solidified, but it also bothers me because I don't know what is real or not. And this isn't a slight against him, but we have to look at the book and see the verbatim conversations that are in quotations that are recollected from like 2008. And
Yeah.
it's like, well, wait a minute. I've interviewed Elizondo, and it's okay, but he's struggled with remembering certain details. Like he didn't remember if he knew To the Stars Academy had the FLIR one and gimbal videos when they were published by the New York Times. When I've brought that up, a lot of people actually don't believe me when I say that. He said that. He didn't remember. He says that To the Stars didn't get the videos from him, and that essentially he was surprised when he saw the New York Times. My whole point in bringing that up is he really didn't remember a lot of that, and that was 2017.
Right.
But yet in the book, now we're seeing these conversations and quotations from people and who was there and whatever. That going back to your comments about it reads like a script again. Yeah, kind of. It's like, how much creative license do we take here when we are dealing with such a sensitive topic and such grandiose claims? Can we make up those conversations to kind of fill in the holes? I would hope not. But I think that those types of questions need to be asked also, like how much creative license was done on these types of conversations. And some people may not care as much as people like me, but I think it's important because as we've learned over the years, certain details were embellished or they were changed or altered right from the start, with Leslie Kane saying that she kind of hid the true scope of OSAP because she felt that it was gonna essentially hurt the story. I forget what her words were, but
Yeah.
that was in a show that I was in with J.J. Abrams did a series called UFO, and I think it was in that series that Kane had admitted that she essentially omitted information because she wanted things to look a little bit better. That's problematic for any journalist to do that. When you omit information, that's not journalism, that's activism.
Right.
And so it was marred from the beginning, but then it's like, okay, well, what else here has been fudged and manipulated and exaggerated and whatever to get to the end goal? And I think that we're realizing that a lot of these stories are more fueling that activism than any type of historical narrative of what really went down. And in a lot of ways, I question more about certain aspects of this now than I did 5-6 years ago, for that reason, because as time goes on, we learn more and more, and it's not really helping. And that's what sucks, because I want so much of this to be true, because it does play into what I really do feel is going on. Massive cover up. I do believe that there's evidence being withheld from the American people. I do believe that there is pieces of proof, of evidence that's there. But when people come out and start talking about it and really just kind of it all falls flat, it hurts those efforts to try and really research this and bring stuff out. And that's why I get a little passionate about it, because it's like, look, this isn't personal against Elizondo or Grusch or whomever wants to come out with their stories. It's not personal, but it's also not helping. Like, you have to, you got to prove something. And, if this book does that when it comes out, great. But from what I've seen, I don't know if it will. Will Grush's op-ed? Great if it does, but will it? Probably not. So it's like we have a lot of things here that have to be questioned, and nobody's really doing it. And it's too bad.
Well, I mean, for me, man, it's like I want to believe all of those things too. And but the only issue is like every single time you dig to the core of either the people or the story, it never checks out. It never ever checks out, and it's incredibly frustrating. It's beyond crying wolf at this point, and to keep going back for seconds, thirds, fourths, fifths, really, we it's just an unlimited buffet that we keep coming back to, and it's every time it comes to bite us in the ass. And I mean, like I in some regards I agree with you in that. Yeah, maybe this will be a big blockbuster. Maybe it'll be a huge bestseller lit thing, but I don't think so, because now I'm thinking of his whole career, like, in the people that I've spoken to and the things that I've heard about this guy. The thing that's going to stop the success of the book and the movie and all of these things is him. He gets in his own way. every single time, John. He gets in his own way, whether it be with the journalists he talks to, whether it be with the podcasters that he makes friends with, whether it be the personal friends that get close to him in his life. Like, everything seems to just always fall apart. And I think the peak of Elizondo was those first 2 seasons of Unidentified. And to be honest with you, it's not even that high of a peak in retrospect. It's tough to believe that. It's tough to believe that he's not going to get in his own way when it comes to making things successful, or good for that matter. I don't know. It seems like every TV show, every production that I've heard him, that he's a part of, it's always him getting in his own way. And then things don't end up working out. And it's always for the money. It's always for a payday. That seems to be the big motivating factor too. And it's just like, I don't know, man. Like, if you're here to tell the biggest truth in the world, and I would feel like we would have more than breadcrumbs by now in the 7 years. And this is the closest we've been in a while. And I think this is the most active FOIA. I mean, would you say, is it fair to say in the 20 or 30 years you've been doing this, is this the most active FOIA period that you've ever had based on all the things that have been coming out in the last 7-year period?
When it comes to UAP, yeah. And that's one good thing that I will say, and I've said it for a long time. There's a lot of good that has come out of this, even though if it's rooted in exaggeration and fabrication, which will be a shame if it turns out to 100% definitively be based on lies. That will suck. But
there's a good flip side.
Has spawned, things like, right. And there's a lot of paper trails that have been congressionally mandated, and that's a good thing. Yes. I mean, again, if this house of cards is weak at the base, which I'm sorry, I do actually feel that it is, the house will fall, but there's still going to be playing cards to pick up on the table. And I think that that's going to be in the wake of all of this. And that is paperwork from Arrow, paperwork from AOI MSG, which nobody talks about anymore, the UAPTF. There's a lot there that I think that there'll be nuggets to uncover. It may sometimes take years. There have been some that have come out, but that's the good side of this. The bad side, though, is that weak foundation. And that, to me, is what's problematic. It's like nothing is easy. What I was talking about, earlier was like nothing in this is easy. Nothing is black and white.
It's always pulling teeth. It's always pulling teeth. Right? It's always,
and you peel a layer, and then there's like 9 more to get through, and it's like, well, that doesn't help. And then you have the minions on X and social media that make it worse, and they have their little secret clubs, and they go, oh, something big's happening. Something big's happening. That makes it worse, Like, look, do some research. If you've got your connections, then figure it out. Let's get something concrete. But there's nothing concrete. And I think that, again, I don't mean to repeat this, but I think this is where you and I differ a little bit. If we judge the topic on the public faces, the stories that we've heard to death over and over on News Nation and Fox and CNN through the last 5, 6, 7 years, when we just judge it on that, it's problematic. But when we look at the evidence as a whole, there really is a lot of evidence here through government files, through military files that have been declassified, that truly offers a foundation that isn't as sensational. It's not as, exciting and sexy, but it's something that you can build on. And sadly, that's lost. Right?
I think I agree. I think it is put aside. I think where we differ, I think there's nothing there from an alien NHI perspective, but what that does leave the door open for is, well, fuck, I think a lot of the things that you FOIA'd are rooted in real technologies that have been made by human hands. And to me, that's incredibly exciting, because when I think about the prospect, and I've really been thinking about Paul Benowitz a lot lately, and the idea that this guy was filming drone systems in 1990, John. 30 years before those things were commercially available. How long were they developed? How long were they used in theaters of war? And this guy was filming them and thinking they were alien spacecraft. I think it's also, there is that cool aspect of a lot of this could be really cool human tech that we're going to learn about in the coming decades. And then there's also this really scary aspect of it. And one of the videos I was going to show today, but it comes out of Comic-Con, and they had a display of over 500-600 drones doing like this huge Marvel, for the Marvel movies. They were doing these huge displays of characters in the sky. And to think that, oh my God, yeah, there could be a terrorist cell in the United States that could easily afford a drone system like that, strap a couple canisters of anthrax, to 300 or 400 drones, and boom, you've got a terrorist attack bigger, if not equivalent as 9/11. And it's exactly what the terrorists want. They want to create, confusion and chaos within our systems. And then we, of course, turn around and question everything that's happening. That shit's scary. And I think people like Lue Elizondo and David Grusch and the things that they're doing are helping us uncover those really scary prospects. And the laws that are being written are helping the branches of military really zero in on the drone problem. Like the drones showing up over our nuclear facilities and aircraft carriers. Like that is the good part of what is coming out of this whole 2017 narrative. Is I think there is a little more transparency. I mean, we do have the Aero office. Not everybody's thrilled with it, but I think we've gotten a lot of clarity out of this office on some things, especially when it comes to some cases, and also things like beating the punch to Kona Blue. Like Kona Blue gets leaked. Holy shit, John, your job becomes infinitely harder. But because Kona Blue is just put out there and it's just like, hey guys, here's this paper. Nothing was funded. Nothing came of this. No scientists were used, but here it is. Just so this way there's no conspiracy theories around it. I think those things are helpful. So I think where we differ is not that big a deal, because yes, it would be cool if it's aliens and other non-human entities, but I think it's also really cool that it could be us. Like, it's probably us. It's definitely us, parts of it. Yeah, go ahead.
The thing though is that if it was this is what keeps me going. I don't toot the alien horn. You know that about me. And for those in your audience who don't know, I don't toot the alien horn. But what I do say is that there's an element at play here. Yeah. That yes, there's drones and foreign technology and advanced human tech, absolutely part of this story. But there's an element of secrecy here that really is kind of, I don't want to say unmatched, but there's a level of secrecy that shouldn't be there if it was as easy as foreign tech, our own tech, or a mix of both. Balloons, add in all those skeptical theories that, yes, are absolutely 100% a part of this story. Chinese spy balloons, 100% part of this story. Technology that, we haven't figured out yet, that's, coming from China or Russia, whatever, absolutely part of this story. But there's still an element at play here that when you really dig into different topics away from UAP, right? So not UFOs, not UAP. I have dug into, you name a government secret, I've probably done a FOIA on it. I'm over 10,500 requests now and approaching the 4 million page mark. I can tell you without a doubt that UFOs and UAP remains one of the hardest topics to try and research. Why? Why is that? I've got stuff on 9/11, terrorist attacks, terrorist threats, terrorists themselves, FBI files, criminal records, threats against the president, against towns, cities, states, nuclear weapons secrets. I mean, I could go on for a while on the type of stuff that I've gotten declassified that the U.S. general public and the world public has never seen. Yeah. And yet when it comes to UAP, especially in the last 10, 15 years of UAP material, there's a level of secrecy there that's that really is kind of unmatched. Why? There's no reason. If it really was technology our own, it would never have gotten as far as it has with UAPTF. Let's go post UAPTF, but AOI, MSG, and Arrow and stuff like that. I don't think it would have gotten this far if that's the only thing that it was. If there were balloon technology platforms, spy platforms, stuff like that, it would never have gotten this far. I think that you would have saw that split up between a couple different agencies. They would have pushed that in the halls of Congress to try and make sure that we're monitoring X, Y, and Z for these types of platforms in the air, towards the ground, and even in the water. And you'd see that divvied up through various agencies that are responsible for those areas. And yet you didn't see that. And that also is intriguing to me, because there's that element here that is super secret. Like, that's a silly way to put it, but it's classified top secret. It's high levels, and the government doesn't want to talk about it. And what they do talk about, which is great, is crap that is explainable. And that's what makes me really realize that there is a counterintelligence value here at play. And that's what messes with all of us on all sides of the spectrum, because you look at the leaks, that it was like leak after leak after leak. I've said this a few times, I'll say it again. Leak after leak after leak. And it's like the DOD had no problems with it at all, and would even talk about the majority of the leaks, not all of them, but was talking about the majority of them, saying, yes, that was utilized in our UAP efforts, but we can't talk about it beyond that. Why? You look at anything else non-UAP related that leaks, there's a huge investigation, people are in cuffs, there's lawsuits within like a day. It's totally different with UAP. So that's what keeps me really interested, because there's something different about this. And if it was as easy as just drones, balloons, and foreign and American technology, I don't think we would see what we see today. And that's what keeps me going.
I would, of course, I have to defer to your expertise and your track record of FOIA requests, but I will rebuttal with, I think when I think of things like the Glomar, right? Denial with in 1974, when the Russian nuclear submarine sank and the United States recovered this thing, and we still don't know to this day how that submarine was recovered. I think when it comes to the United States, I think the most advanced tech in the military arsenal is in the air. It's the most expensive, it's the most interesting, it's the most high tech. I can't think of any other object or hardware that rivals that of the Air Force and the Navy. Like, there's just that part of the sky is always being developed on, and I can understand a level of secrecy if you've got things that you don't want people to see for the next 30 years. And with the development of drones and balloon systems, and people are able to reach sensitive airspaces in a lot easier form and ways. And I think because of the introduction of all of these new, cheaper technologies, I can understand the response to that would be like, okay, well, we gotta really fucking tighten this up now, because now there's eyeballs everywhere. I can kind of understand from that perspective, but I also understand what you're saying. In other regards of secrets in government, it doesn't seem to be as tight-lipped or as difficult to get information out. But I mean, unfortunately, all we have, I mean, as far as I can see, yes, there are those FOIA, that are talking about very interesting technologies, but there's nothing, when outside of that, all we have are talking heads. And we want to trust these talking heads. We want them to be telling the truth, and they're intriguing and they're interesting. But a lot of cases, these talking heads will drop something big, And then by the time the facts come out and you've FOIA'd everything, it's 4, 6, 7 years down the road, and nobody cares anymore. It doesn't matter. And it's kind of like the same thing that a movie, a mess a movie would create. You drop a big blockbuster film, and at the very front of it, it says based on a true story, and therefore everything after that is true. It's just a mess, man. I don't know.
Yeah, if I could make one point.
Yeah, go for it.
You had brought up the 30 years later we'll find out about the technology, and so on. And you bring up an interesting point. Yeah, the general public, I think the rule of thumb is like 30 to 40 years or so behind understanding what the government really has. And what's interesting about the UFO phenomenon is when you look at the history books and you look at the government documents that have come out, there are records that, number one, still remain classified, or number two, were mysteriously destroyed that deal with this phenomenon.
Yeah.
And we still have no idea what it is. And we're not talking about just some blacked out documents from the 50s or whatever, but there are CIA intelligence records that prove that there was UFO material that was 7 years out of the closure of Project Blue Book being looked at by CIA scientists. And that internally at the CIA, they were still watching what was going on in the UFO arena because they had an interest in it. They knew that there was an element to it that they could not explain. Now, that's not whistleblower talk. That's not somebody told me and it's anonymous source. Trust me, bro.
Yeah.
That's all documented within U.S. government files. Now, what's interesting, though, is that about the CIA material that they had, there are redacted pieces of these intelligence files that came out. And I went after to get these documents further declassified, which is called an MDR review. And the result was that the CIA lost all of them. And so what they did was they, according to them, redacted the originals, saved the redacted ones, and shredded the ones that were unredacted. So we will never know what's going on. And to go to your point of the 30 years, you're absolutely right. When it comes to human tech, that's generally what happens. But when you start looking at the evidence, not the voices of today, but when you start looking at the evidence and go backwards, you start to realize that we are well beyond 30 years in a lot of this arena and these documents that have come out, and that there is no explanation that can be put in. You look at some of the cases from Blue Book, which now that I've spent years looking at them, they're pretty boring. I won't lie. A lot of them are just boring as heck. But there are some that just don't meet the criteria to be explained that were labeled as explained. Not my point of view, but rather the chief scientist that was involved in it. And that's also provable by documents that have come out. So you start to look at all that. It's like, well, wait a minute. Okay, so let's use the formula of 30, 40 years. And we are well beyond that in many of these cases. And we still have zero that we can kind of plug in there and say, oh, okay, that was, I'm just kind of making this up here, but like a flight of the U-2 or the SR-71 or whatever advanced platform going back there. So not to go off on a tangent, but I think you brought up a brilliant point that we are decades behind learning what they have. But that is actually my point too, in that you don't have anything you can plug into some of these cases of decades old and make it make sense.
Well,
then that doesn't make sense.
The
Fast
only
forward,
thing
you have the same thing.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. The only thing that I can think of that would make sense to me would be just cloak and dagger CIA bullshit. Like when we to look at the remote viewing program, like I think they prop that program up to make it look like a big deal to get the Russians to think, oh my God, the Americans are looking at remote viewing. We also got to do a remote viewing program and get them to waste resources and scientists and time and money on remote viewing that isn't real. I think that could easily be applied to this whole UFO thing, like, with the whole Roswell crash. Like, how it is so crazy that the thing they say, oh, first it was an alien spacecraft, then they changed it to weather balloon, and it turned out to be the most top secret weather balloon on the planet at the time, the second only to the atom bomb as far as classification of how secret it was. So I understand what you're saying, but I also think that there's a lot of deception, especially in that time. And that's the only issue. Here's another, well, not the only, but it's the other issue that I have with these cases that are over 30 years old, 40, 50, 60 years old. They're intriguing. There's good paperwork leads on them, but it's all gone. It's all gone. So we can't, there's no way to verify this stuff anymore. So yes, as intriguing as interesting as it is, as it was the CIA, like the most distrusted 3-letter agency out there, maybe on the planet. And so I hear what you're saying, John. And like I said, I always love talking to you because you always make me think of stuff. But I just like you, I think both of us just want some evidence. Like we just want this to be tangible. So that way there's some light at the end of this tunnel.
I don't know if the light at the end of the tunnel is a train or not, though. That's the only problem. But I can say that we do agree that we need evidence. But to me, I think that there's enough evidence to not dismiss it. And I think that's why these conversations are important, because I think that the voices of today, and I'm speaking generally here, but a lot of the voices of today, from the big names to the podcasters / bloggers, are hurting this topic and this conversation by doing their anonymous sources and, doing their teases and making a little business, like a literal business out of this, and selling their t-shirts for people making money. I wrote books. I sell t-shirts that I don't have a problem with that. Yeah. But when you fabricate, try and get people to give you the money, that to me is problematic, and that hurts this conversation. But I think going back to the actual evidence, there's enough to really see that the U.S. government here is covering something up. I don't believe it's as easy as some people want to believe it is. But then again, I don't think it's as sensational as others want us to believe today. Right. And that's what that counterintelligence value is, because to the intelligence community, I'm hoping we can all agree that they're covering it up, right? Whatever it is. Yeah, no,
there's no doubt. I mean, something's being covered up. It's just what your belief at what that cover up is, what is at the core of that onion. And I think everybody's right a little bit. I just think the very last right answer, if it is right, is alien. So and that's the only difference. But I think you're right. I think I love this conversation because I know that you can have it with me, and nobody's gonna walk away pissed off or upset. It's just like you're making good points, and I think I'm rebutting with good points as well. And I think these are the kind of conversations that I would love to be hearing, instead of these fake news sources and these attacks on, from Matt Ford on Mick West and on you and on Stephen Greenstreet. And for what? Like, so you could turn around and use your FOIA request 2 weeks later? Like it's a joke, dude.
Yeah, that was so bizarre to me. And that guy, don't get me started, because it's ridiculous how he acts. And you're exactly right. He'll attack you on a Monday and then use your stuff on a Tuesday. And he literally did that. Like, I mean, it was insane. So I don't understand it. But I think that the root of it, though, has to be discussed. Why is that going on? Why is he the director of strategy or whatever for an organization that includes Gary Nolan, Lue Elizondo, Chris Mellon, seeking out dollars, and he's the strategy guy. And I can tell you 100%, he is fabricating, and I speak for myself here, fabricating about people like me to try and attack. And that's it. Why? Like, is that all he has in life? Well, that's kind of sad. But is it like, is there something else at play here? I don't have the answer to that. It's silly. But I think it's something that needs to be really questioned. And I tagged a couple of the guys and never got a response. But I question why would Lue Elizondo be associated with someone like him? Why would Christopher Mellon be associated like him? Putting videos online. I think it's holding up.
Yeah, I know what you're about to say. I'm sorry, I cut you off, and I know we're on this little bit of a time delay. But I think that could have been me, John. Like, that could have easily been me. I could easily have been Matt Ford if I just decided to, when I got that text message and been like, well, fuck, John Greenewald's a felon and he's attacking my friend Lue Elizondo. Well, that's it. I'm going to go on the all offensive and bash the shit out of John Greenewald because this guy told me he was a felon. It was the yuckiness of it that made me go, okay, I can't do this anymore, dude. Like, this doesn't feel right. Like, this message, this whole thing just doesn't feel right. And you're right, it is a business, because I was making almost $40,000 a year off of it, and it was a lot more fun to talk about UFOs and make $40,000 a year. If I'd be making a hell of a lot more money now if I decided to bash you and fire fucking, rather be squidding. Like, my life would have been way more, like, way easier. And it's just like, dude, it doesn't. He does it not because they ask him to do it. He associates with him because he does all the things that he doesn't have to tell him to do. He is literally a lapdog that fetches the paper without even asking him. And so that's why Elizondo attaches himself, and he did it to Thomas Fessler for a little bit until Matt Ford showed up. Once Matt Ford showed up, that was like the saving grace, because all they had was Thomas Fessler at that point. So like, yeah, of course they went to Matt Ford. So yeah, dude, it's just weird, and
it's ugly. The bottom line is, it's absolutely ugly. It's ridiculous, and I would hope. I may be wishful thinking here that those bigger names are not puppeteering people like Matt Ford and whatever, but it certainly, seems that way. And
I can tell you, if I got the text that I got, I cannot imagine the conversation that guy is having behind the scenes. Like, I just can't imagine. So yeah, it's yucky.
Yeah. Well, it's a shame. The bottom line is, I think you said you were trying to end at 7, but
no,
I'll just close it with this.
Yeah.
All that stuff is ridiculously stupid, because the bottom line is there's more better things to talk about, in more intelligent ways to talk about it, and it's super important. I think that there's a lot to talk here, with people like you and Mick West and those that are very skeptical about it. People like me in the middle. There's other people that really do have more hardcore beliefs, and that's fine. I think that there's more amazing conversations to be had than those that are out to attack others and fabricate things. Because again, going back to me, what I do for a living. You know me personally.
Yeah.
To have them fabricate, we don't have to say it to help with that rumor, but to say that I do something and run a business that I don't, that has to do with adult toys and stuff like that. It's ridiculous. How stupid can you be to start fabricating about that kind of stuff against people? And, it's frustrating because my son, as he gets older, he knows daddy does television and online streaming, and he watches YouTube stuff. And for people to post stuff like that, he's going to start seeing that and start to wonder, like, what are you doing? He's a smart kid.
Right.
And once I had kids, your whole view on all that stuff changes. Right. And I can't help but say it pisses you off. It's like, fight me against my work. Fight me against what I say. Don't make up what I do for a living.
Right.
Don't make these stupid jokes, because that's all you have is fabrication. It says more about them than it does about me. And it's a shame.
No, without a doubt, John.
But bottom line, I think that there's a lot better stuff to talk about.
I agree, and I think the conversation we had here for the last hour was a really good example of that. Before I get you out of here, I've had this question up. I've been meaning to ask you, but the conversation was so good. And please, if you have a one-word answer, be more than free to do it as short as you want. But Brian Ibach asks, how does John feel about the new round of congressional hearings focusing on FOIA and the lack of responses to those lawful requests?
As in scheduled ones? Because I'm not familiar.
I'm assuming
hearing like 6 months to a year ago.
How does John feel about the new round of I'm assuming the new round of UAP congressional hearings focusing on FOIA and the lack of responses to those lawful requests. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Maybe I'm reading this wrong, but
I'll be unless I miss something or maybe just drawing a blank. I'm not familiar with FOIA coming up in connection to UAP.
Okay.
I would love it if it did. I mean, heck, whatever congressman or congresswoman's involved, I could write them a book of evidence and citable cases that they can use on lack of responses. But yeah, the way that question is worded, I'm not sure if you're talking about the UAP hearing as a whole, not connected to FOIA. I think that's great. I fully 100% advocate for it. And look, if it means bringing Grusch back, great. But I would hope that there is some level of either evidence or accountability to counter what he's saying. So if he's making accusations against DOD/Pentagon or DNI or NSA or CIA or whomever, bring those. I think those are the directors you need to get in there and have them under oath. And if it was up to me, I'd do it the same day and have them at the same table and go back and forth. Not because I want fireworks, but I want accountability. And I think that if they're going to have more hearings, that's the kind of stuff that we want to hear. We've heard from military pilots. We've heard from former government officials and intelligence agents. That's all great. Let's get the government in the seat and ask pointed questions. That's more important to me at this point. I'm done with the stories of accusations.
Yeah.
I'm curious about responses and how much the congressional members can push. That's what I'd love to see.
Yeah. Well, I'm right there with you, John. And if there's anything I could do to help, I mean, if people keep asking, are you going to do another big phone home? I was like, dude, the only way I ever did, if I'd even consider it, the only thing we'd talk about is FOIA. That's the only interest I have, is improving FOIA. That would be my only interest at all if I ever did one again. But yeah, if there's anything ever we could do to help improve that, of course we're here.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm always interested in people willing to help on FOIA. Did you see my post the other day that I broke my record of the longest open request?
Yes, I did. Congratulations for breaking your own record.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see. It's still open, too. It's not even done. So
I love it.
I'm over 15 years. Yeah, we'll see. And then today, a little teaser, I got some documents from the NSA that took 14 years.
Wow.
So, and that literally just about an hour ago to my mailbox. Yeah.
Woo! Okay, cool. Well, I can't wait to hear what comes out of that. John Greenewald, man, thank you for surprising me today and hanging out for an hour and a half. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It's always
the parking lot sitting much better.
Oh man, thank you, dude. It's always a blast to hear from you, man. And I always get a chuckle when I get your texts when stuff's going down in the community. It's always fun to chat and giggle with you because yeah, to me, you're my one of my favorites out there because it's so much fun to talk to you. It's always a rational conversation that it can always be. Like there's so many interesting aspects to this conversation outside of the alien thing, and I just wish people would really sort of focus on that, but they don't. But John Greenewald, Black Vault. If you guys do not know John Greenewald's work, where the hell have you been? He's a legend in this town. But John, is there anything you want to plug before you get out of here?
Nah, nothing to plug, man. I just wanted to say thanks, and I didn't mean to take over,
dude,
and stay the whole ride. I know you.
Oh my God, no! This was so much better than the show I was gonna do. So much better. It's been so boring. So to talk to John, it's been great. I got to ask you to come on more. You know what? I'll just get the audience to ask you to come on more. I'll read more. I'll read my chats more. John Greenewald's here, man. Get him on the show. I was like, what the hell's going on? I love it.
Well, we'll have to do it again, and I'll have a video and better setup than a car cell phone.
Awesome, man. Well, dude, I appreciate your time, and I appreciate all the work. And yeah, man, have fun the rest of your week. I thought it was Friday for some reason. You made it feel like a Friday, John.
It's every day is a Friday in the Greenewald household.
There you go. There you go. All right, buddy. Thanks for hanging out. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, man. Anytime. I'll talk to you later.
All right, buddy. Bye.
Bye.
Dude, John Greenewald hanging out, man. We didn't even get to the other videos, other stuff. We'll do it on Friday. That was the best show ever. That was a hell of a lot of fun. A lot of great information. When it comes to the FOIA request that Ken Klippenstein did. So clip the hell out of this show. Share the shit out of it. Tell everybody what just happened. I think this was a great conversation. It was a great education on the FOIA process by the FOIA King. So You can't ask for anything better. You guys enjoy the rest of your week. I'm not sure. Yeah, we'll be doing a show on Friday, I think. My birthday's coming up this week, so there's some things being planned for me that I don't know about. So as of right now, I'm pretty sure we're doing a show on Friday. If not, we'll see you on Monday. But yeah, it's been a hell of a fun show. You guys don't forget to like, share, subscribe. Thank you so much for coming on this journey of curiosity. And thank you for helping raise the bar here on Lue Reviews. Until next time, we'll see you guys later. Peace out. Have a great night.